A mere custodian, that was the designation my sister Olivia employed when she summarily revoked my invitation to the familial Christmas celebration. There was no hesitation, absolutely no sense of shame, just absolute raw dismissal. And when I notified my parents anticipating some form of maternal defense, they responded only with amusement. That circumstances bumps unavoidable, my father, Marcus stated, as if my very presence were an inconvenient. Given I didn't engage in dispute, I refused to yield to tears. I simply and silently discontinued the monthly remittance for her medical school tuition. The profound irony was that she was entirely unaware I was the indispensable financial underpinning of her entire enrollment. When she initially submitted her application, my parents extolled her potential, but their resources were utterly insufficient. Loans and academic grants even combined failed to cover the significant fiscal deficit she faced. Certain financial collapse before she would ever handle a surgical instrument. Therefore, I intervened covertly. I provided information to absolutely no one. Monthly, I appropriated my hard-earned earnings, scrubbed clean from prolonged overnight shifts, sanitizing corporate offices and emptying waste receptacles, and directed them straight into her professional aspiration. I undertook this not because I believed she had merited the support, but because I clung to the naive conviction that kin would fundamentally safeguard one another. I was mistaken. Her deliberate cruelty did not materialize instantaneously. Initially, it comprised subtle diminutions, omitting introductions. When colleagues visited, offering casual disparagement regarding my blue-collar profession, I chose forbearance. She was young, I rationalized, perhaps socially insecure. I genuinely believed that the maturity of time would instill a measure of respect. Instead, her overweening arrogance expanded with every successful examination and every symbolic academic milestone. The entire family venerated her as the exemplary talent, the guaranteed future physician, while I was relegated to mere background static, the custodian, until she finally articulated the denigration publicly, and my parents sanctioned it with their laughter. That was my final financial investment in her future. The cessation of the tuition payments was an entirely non-confrontational procedure. No intense altercation, no overt warning, simply a quiet professional telephonic instruction given to the school's financial department. One recurring account was formally closed, one consistent electronic payment was systematically eradicated. The action was simple, precise, and utterly irreversible. I possessed a clear foresight into the inevitable unfolding of the situation. Academic institutions are not characterized by leniency. Financial arrears accumulate with alarming speed. Formal delinquency notifications are dispatched, then the unavoidable calls for payment begin. Ultimately, true desperation sets in. I had no requirement to expose my involvement. The established administrative system would execute the necessary work on my behalf. The full consequence required less than 3 weeks to manifest. My mobile device illuminated one evening with my father's contact number. I deliberately let it ring, then my mother's, and then her own. Finally, I answered. Her voice was instantaneously frantic, fractured by evident panic. They delivered an invoice. It specifies an immediate liability of $30,000. What possible explanation is there? I almost permitted a slight knowing smile. I would not have that information, perhaps. The custodian simply ceased funding the obligation. Profound silence ensued. In that singular, devastating moment, her realization was complete. All her perceived superiority, her relentless self-importance, her profound sense of entitlement, all of it was utterly obliterated by a single, outstanding financial balance. The calls rapidly intensified. My parents began making furious demands for clarification. How could you inflict this degree of damage upon your own family? I delivered my own measured, cold rejoinder. Family does not intentionally exclude you from major events like Christmas. Family does not exhibit amusement when you are publicly demeaned. Family does not designate you a stranger within your own direct bloodline. They became entirely quiet then understanding, implicitly that my statement was incontrovertible fact. I never elevated my tone, I never hurled her failures or her accumulating debts back into her face. It was unnecessary. The inescapable financial reality executed the retribution for me. She pleaded, she importuned, promises of total behavioral reformation poured from her lips like worthless, desperate rhetoric, but desperation is merely a tactical survival mechanism, not an authentic transformation of character. I remained resolute. I would not serve as her accessible lifeline ever again. Consequently, I allowed her to face the full severity of her self-created crisis. Now every time I enter the immaculate building I service, I perceive a significant sense of lightness, no longer burdened by shame, no longer feeling intrinsically lesser. I reflect on the reality of how my manual labor sustained her academic ascension, how my own hands were instrumental in constructing her future while she casually denigrated my existence. And I now fully comprehend that I was never merely anything. I was unacknowledged, power cloaked in vocational modesty, and the moment I quietly rescinded that power, she was finally compelled to see me for who I actually was, the ultimate arbiter of the financial dynamic. They desired a doctor. They desired a Christmas entirely free of the custodian. Now they possess neither, no physician, no custodian, only a pervasive silence where familial connection once resided. And as for me, I have never experienced a greater sense of absolute personal liberation.